Hello, my name is Alex and I'm a registered dietitian working in West Essex. If you are watching this video, it may be that yourself or a relative are at an increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes. This is sometimes referred to as pre-diabetes. This presentation will explain what happens when blood glucose levels are higher, how pre-diabetes is diagnosed, and will provide simple, practical tips to reduce the risk of developing type 2 diabetes in the future. This presentation is approximately 20 minutes long. Please feel free to stop and start the video as needed and revisit sections afterwards. Please also be aware that this is general advice. If you require personalised advice for you as an individual, please ask your GP surgery to book you an appointment with a dietitian. So, let's start with what is pre-diabetes. Pre-diabetes is when an individual's blood glucose levels are higher than the normal expected range. However, these levels are not quite high enough yet to be diagnosed as type 2 diabetes. Having pre-diabetes increases the risk of developing type 2 diabetes in the future. But an important fact to remember is that in most cases it can be completely possible to reduce blood glucose levels via lifestyle changes. This helps to reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes developing and helps to reduce the likelihood of associated complications, such as issues with our heart, kidneys, eyes and feet. It is really important for us to understand what is going on inside our bodies when blood glucose levels are higher. This next slide is going to look at how the body normally gets rid of excess glucose in the blood. Our blood glucose levels will naturally rise during the day, especially after eating. When our blood glucose levels rise, the body works to move the glucose from the blood to inside our body cells. This is done via a hormone called insulin. Insulin goes up to our cells and essentially unlocks the cell doors. By unlocking our cells, the glucose can then move out of the blood and into our cells. This helps to supply our cells with the energy they need and allows blood glucose levels to return back to normal. So how does that differ for someone with pre-diabetes? An individual with pre-diabetes will still produce insulin when their blood glucose levels are high. However, the lock and key system is not working very well. This means that the insulin cannot open up the cell doors. If the cell doors remain shut, the glucose sitting in our blood has nowhere to move. This results in blood glucose levels remaining high. It can also result in more and more insulin being produced. This build-up of insulin that the body is not able to use can sometimes be referred to as insulin resistance. There are some common symptoms to keep an eye out for that may indicate your blood glucose levels are running too high. These symptoms are more common in individuals with type 2 diabetes, but you may find they start to occur if your levels continue to increase. Firstly, if all of the glucose is stuck in your blood, instead of being able to reach your cells, you may find that you do not have enough energy. This can cause tiredness, and you may find that you fall asleep easily during the day. When the body is struggling to get rid of the glucose in your blood, sometimes the kidneys work to excrete some of it in your urine. This can mean that you are urinating more frequently, especially during the night time. Because you may be urinating more frequently, the body can then start to become dehydrated. This can cause some individuals with high blood glucose levels to feel very thirsty. When we have high blood glucose levels, some people find that they experience blurred vision. This can be due to excess glucose sitting behind the film in your eyes. Finally, with lots of extra glucose, the blood can become quite thick. Therefore, it can take longer to transport cells around the body. This can lead to a delay in healing and recovery from illness or injury. There are two main tests that help healthcare professionals identify if you're at a high risk of developing type 2 diabetes. The first test is a fasting blood glucose level. If your level is between 5.5 and 6.9, this indicates that you're at an increased risk of developing diabetes. Levels above 7 are likely to lead to a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. The second test is a HbA1c. This blood test looks at the average amount of glucose in your blood for the last 2 to 3 months. This gives healthcare professionals a better idea of what has been happening over a longer period of time. If your level is between 42 and 47, this indicates prediabetes. Levels above 48 are likely to lead to a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. If you're at a high risk of developing type 2 diabetes, you should be having your levels checked annually via your GP surgery. As with all health conditions, there are factors that can increase our chances of having type 2 diabetes. Some of these risk factors are things that we do not have control over, such as age, gender, genetics, and other medical conditions that we may have. When we are trying to make changes to improve our health, it is really important to focus on the factors that are within our control to change. The controllable factors that are important to consider for reducing the risk of developing type 2 diabetes are improving diet and eating patterns, increasing physical activity, maintaining a healthy body weight, drinking alcohol sensibly, managing stress, improving sleep hygiene, including sleep quality and quantity, and stopping or reducing smoking. Let's think about diet to start with. The main nutrient that can impact our blood glucose levels is carbohydrates. There are 3 main categories or types of carbohydrate. Firstly, we have starchy carbs, and this includes things such as bread and bread products, rice, pastas, potato, oats, breakfast cereals, noodles, and couscous. The second type of carbohydrates are our natural sugars, and this includes all fruit, such as fresh, frozen, tinned, dried, juiced or smoothies, and also the natural sugars within milks and yogurts. The third group or type of carbohydrates are our added sugars. For example, added table sugar in drinks or cooking, sugary drinks, and more processed foods such as biscuits, sweets, chocolate, cakes, sauces, jams, and marmalades. All types of carbohydrate-containing foods will break down into glucose and consequently increase blood glucose levels. Everyone's carbohydrate requirements are different, and we don't have to stop having carbohydrates entirely. However, avoiding excessive quantities of carbohydrates can have a really significant impact on reducing our blood glucose levels and also helping with weight loss if that is an aim. With starchy carbohydrates, it can help to choose higher fibre versions of these products instead of the white refined versions, such as choosing granary bread, whole grain rice, whole wheat noodles, couscous or pasta, and oats. This is because these options release the glucose at a slower rate into the bloodstream in comparison to the white alternatives. They also keep us feeling fuller for longer, and they can be more nutritious. Secondly, aim to reduce your portion size of starchy carbohydrates at meal times. If you are trying to lose weight, aim for approximately a quarter of your plate to be taken up by starchy carbohydrates. The rest of the plate should be covered by a quarter protein, such as meat, fish, eggs or beans and pulses, and a half vegetables or salad. Finally, avoid having meals where there are multiple portions of starchy carbohydrates, such as pasta and bread or potatoes and rice. Foods that are high in natural sugars are still important for our health in moderation. For example, fruit provides us with fibre, vitamins, minerals and antioxidants. And milk and yogurts are great for protein, calcium and iodine. However, because they do contain natural sugars, they can have an impact on our blood glucose levels if we have them in large quantities. With fruit, it can be helpful to limit yourself to a maximum of 3 portions of fruit per day. Additionally, aim to spread these portions throughout the day instead of having them all in one sitting. Using tinned fruit can be a more affordable and practical way of eating fruit, but try to choose tinned fruit in juices opposed to syrup, and you could also rinse the tinned fruit with water to remove excess carbohydrates. Additionally, as fruit juices and smoothies can be a very concentrated form of natural sugars, it is advised to limit these drinks to a maximum of 150 ml or 1 small glass per day. Milk and dairy foods are important for our bone health, so we should be having 2 to 3 portions of milk, yogurt, cheese, or fortified milk alternatives per day. However, please check the labels and choose options that are lower in total carbohydrates. It is really important for our health to limit our intake of added sugars and processed foods. Processed foods tend to be high in calories, carbohydrates, and saturated fats. Aim to reduce your intake of processed foods and increase your intake of naturally occurring foods instead. Reduce or stop added sugar in drinks. If you are struggling with this, try to very gradually reduce the amount of sugar you add to drinks, as this will help your taste buds to adapt. Avoid sugary drinks and instead choose the diet or no added sugar options when having them. Finally, always check food labels and choose the options that are lower in total carbohydrates. Looking at food labels can be very confusing. The nutritional table or list, usually found on the back of packaging, will always give you accurate information about what is in that product, so it's always a good starting place. When you compare products, it is most accurate to compare them per 100 grams. These labels are examples of 2 different types of cherry-flavoured yogurts. When trying to understand which item will impact blood glucose levels the most, it is best to compare them by total carbohydrates or carbohydrates. Using this example, one yogurt contains 4.9 grams of carbohydrates per 100 grams, whilst the other contains 13.8 grams. This shows you that there are great variations in total carbohydrates, even between products that are incredibly similar. The options with the lowest amounts of carbohydrates will have the smallest impact on blood glucose levels, and are therefore likely the better option to choose. You can also use the nutritional table to compare things such as fat, saturated fat, and salt levels. You can also use the traffic light system often found on the front of packaging. The traffic light system gives you a quick reference point about the nutritional value of the product in front of you. Green indicates go ahead, amber suggests us to be cautious about the quantity that we eat, whilst red indicates that we should be limiting that product within our diet. However, you may realise that the traffic light system only talks about the sugar content. This may include the added sugars and sometimes also the natural sugars. However, the traffic light system does not give you any idea about the amount of starchy carbohydrates in that product. Therefore, even though an item may be green for sugar, it could still be high in starchy carbohydrates. Because of this, the traffic light system can be used as a quick guide, but the nutritional table on the back of the packet is always the best place to check the total carbohydrate content. There are many foods that are lower in carbohydrate and therefore have less of an impact on blood glucose levels. These can be helpful foods to incorporate at meal times and as snacks. Vegetables, salad, meats, especially lean options such as chicken and turkey, fish, and we should be aiming for 2 portions of fish per week, one of which being oily, such as salmon, trout, mackerel or sardines. Eggs, beans and pulses, for example lentils, chickpeas, butter beans and kidney beans, unsalted nuts and seeds, cheese, oils, with the healthiest options including extra virgin olive oil or rapeseed oil, and avocado. Dietitians are often asked about the best timings to eat. For a long time, individuals at risk of or with type 2 diabetes were told to graze little and often throughout the day. Whilst for some this may be necessary, for most, grazing throughout the day means that more and more glucose is being released into the blood continuously. This makes it much harder for glucose levels to return back down to normal. Instead, it is helpful to aim to have 3 well-balanced meals per day, limit snacking in between meals, and to keep well hydrated throughout the day from low or no sugar fluids. Drinking alcohol above the recommended amount can have a big impact on our overall health and also on our blood glucose levels. Alcohol can contain large amounts of calories and carbohydrates. It can also therefore have an impact on our weight. The current advice in the UK is to limit alcohol to a maximum of 14 units per week. We should also avoid regularly drinking more than 2 to 3 units of alcohol in one day. And we should aim to have at least 2 alcohol-free days per week. But what does a unit mean? 1 pint of beer, lager or cider is roughly 2.3 units, whilst a can would be 2 units and a bottle would be 1.7. A single measure of spirits, such as vodka or gin, is roughly 1 unit, and therefore a double would be 2 units. Whilst 1 small glass of wine is 1.5 units, a standard glass is 2.1, and a large glass is 3. Finally, drinks such as Alcopops are roughly 1.5 units per bottle. This shows that even having 1 standard glass of wine per day would exceed current alcohol recommendations, so it is really easy to be drinking too much. There are many tips that can help to reduce your alcohol intake, such as using smaller measures, like replacing pints of beer with bottles of beer, using smaller wine glasses, and opting for single measures instead of doubles, choosing spritzers, so using things like sparkling water or diet lemonade to dilute your drink, and if drinking for a prolonged period of time, alternate alcohol with no added sugar soft drinks. As well as diet, physical activity is very important for our health. Being active on a daily basis can help with many things such as weight loss, bone health, heart health, including reducing blood pressure and blood cholesterol levels, lifting our mood, and improving our sleep quality and quantity. Being active also helps to reduce our blood glucose levels. As we move our body, we take the glucose sitting in our blood to fuel the movement that we are doing. Even after we stop exercising, our muscles continue to take glucose out of the blood as they contract, recover, and repair. This in turn helps to reduce our blood glucose levels and reduces the risk of developing type 2 diabetes. It is a good idea to think about your current activity levels and see if there is flexibility to increase how active you are. When setting goals, make sure you choose activities that you enjoy. We are far more likely to continue with new behaviours if we like doing them. Try to incorporate a mix of both aerobic and resistance exercises. Aerobic exercises include walking, jogging and swimming and are really good for our heart health. Whilst resistance exercises involves a force against our muscles, such as using resistance bands, hand weights or our own body weight. These types of exercises are great for our bone health and for reducing insulin resistance. Set realistic targets for exercise. Plan out when in the week you'll be able to exercise and start with exercises that are safe for you. Many lower intensity activities are still fantastic for our health, for example chair-based exercises and walking. And gradually increase the frequency, duration and intensity over time as you feel able and fitter to do so. Additionally, please remember, even day-to-day tweaks can have a huge impact on how active we are, such as walking instead of driving, taking stairs instead of lifts, and regularly stretching our legs if we sit down for long periods in the daytime. For some people, healthy weight loss may be a way of improving their overall well-being, but also reducing their risk of developing type 2 diabetes. If you have gained weight, making practical steps to reduce your weight back to your usual set point can help to reduce blood glucose levels. For individuals that are overweight, even losing 5 to 10% of their body weight can have a huge impact on their health. Losing roughly between 1 to 2 pounds per week is a fantastic aim for those trying to lose weight. And although this may sound like a small amount, visually this is a really significant amount of body weight to lose. Stress can also have a profound impact on our health and also on our blood glucose levels. Stress is often a factor that is overlooked or forgotten. However, regularly it can be one of the main reasons why an individual's blood glucose levels have increased. It's important to think about what causes stress for you and what practical steps could help to reduce that. We are all very different when it comes to managing stress, and therefore plans need to be suitable for you as an individual. However, some techniques that often help include increasing our physical activity levels, including regularly getting outside and being in fresh air and nature. Starting gentle exercises that focus on breathing techniques such as yoga and Pilates. Having massages. Starting regular meditation, and it may be helpful here to explore the meditation apps that are available on smartphones. Talking to friends, family, or thinking about talking therapy. Writing to-do lists can also help to organise thoughts and reduce the feeling of being overwhelmed. It is also really important to regularly make time for yourself to do things that you enjoy or just to relax. Additionally, getting a good quality and quantity of sleep is also key in managing stress. As with stress, we often forget the impact poor sleep can have on all aspects of our health. It can be a difficult factor to work on, however there are many practical ways that we can help with both lack of sleep and disturbed sleep. For example, it is important to have a regular sleep pattern. This involves having a set bedtime and a set wake-up time every day, as the body likes routine. Sleeping in a dark and cool room can also help with a good night's sleep. If you do not like sleeping with the windows open, consider opening the windows before going to bed, and try to avoid any light coming into the room via doors, windows, or electrical devices. Wear light, loose-fitting clothing whilst in bed, instead of anything tight, restrictive, or uncomfortable. Avoid screens before going to bed, such as phones, laptops, and televisions. Instead, consider a different bedtime routine, for example, having a bath, reading a book, or listening to music or a podcast. Exercising during the day can also help to improve how we sleep at night time, as well as keeping well hydrated. If you find that you get up frequently during the night to urinate, try to drink more of your fluids towards the first part of the day. Caffeine can also have a huge impact on how we sleep. Everybody's tolerance to caffeine is very different, and an individual's tolerance levels can change throughout a lifetime. If you are struggling to sleep at night, consider reducing your intake of caffeine and stop caffeinated products from lunchtime onwards. Caffeinated products include tea, coffee, soft drinks, energy drinks, and chocolate. Also, although we love our pets, having pets sleeping in the bed with us can be incredibly disruptive. Instead, encourage pets to sleep in their own beds or outside of the bedroom. The final factor to consider for reducing blood glucose levels is smoking. Smoking can impact insulin resistance as well as our heart and respiratory health. If you would like to reduce or stop smoking, please contact your GP surgery to discuss the use of stop smoking services, patches, or medications. We really hope this presentation has been helpful and has provided you with some simple tips to help reduce blood glucose levels. When making changes to improve your health, please set yourself small, realistic targets and then gradually build on this one at a time. If you would like some more advice or require some more individualised information, please ask at your GP surgery to be booked in to see the dietitian. If you are at risk of developing type 2 diabetes, you may be eligible to attend the free NHS Diabetes Prevention Programme. If you are interested in finding out more about this programme or about being referred, please contact your doctor's surgery for more information. Thank you very much for listening, and please take a look at our other available videos to see if they may also be helpful for you.